Good morning, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners. Welcome to the latest edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. We have a special Sunday show lined up for you after returning home from Mobile, Alabama. Pewter Report saw plenty of players put themselves on the map, and so we thought it would be fun to look at who could find themselves with the Bucs in the 2025 NFL Draft. So let's get into it. I'm your host, Adam Slivon, and joining me is Josh Queipo, our resident cap and draft guru. Josh, it's great to have you on the show this morning. I'm Adam Slivon.
Hey, Adam, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
You
It's fun to
enjoying
do this with you.
Orlando?
Yeah, Orlando was fun. Was there yesterday for the Pro Bowl practices for the AFC and NFC, and got to see Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Tristan Wirfs, and they had a lot of exciting things to say about Josh Grizzard.
I bet. I think I saw the clip that you had up of Mike kind of saying it doesn't matter who the OC is, my job's to get open.
Yeah,
and but he did have some pretty cool things to say about Grizzard, and I know that Pewter Report will be covering more about Grizzard on Monday, but it was kind of cool to see generally a positive reaction from inside the locker room, at least with the Pro Bowl guys. And that they feel very good with continuity kind of winning out in this particular situation.
yeah, I think continuity is probably the biggest thing. And even Mike Evans, he mentioned his job's to get open, but he also mentioned that the offense last year, they went from being the fourth highest scoring, but they have goals. They want to be the best in the league this season. And they think with Grizzard, he's the best option to get them there. And he's a very bright guy going to Yale. He was behind the scenes as a pass game coordinator. A lot of times, they're just the guy that's like a little bit more than a quality control coach, but he was in charge of the third down offense. And the fact that they had the best third down offense in the NFL at 51.1%, it speaks volumes to what Grizzard was able to do schematically, formationally, and really just kind of bouncing ideas off of Liam Cohen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anywhere we turn at Pewter Report and ask anybody inside the Bucs, they all have positive things to say about Grizzard. I think they're all very happy with this as, let's be honest, it's a plan B. They wanted Liam back. But with Liam Cohen moving on to Jacksonville, I think they feel very comfortable with where the offense is headed and that it's in the hands of Josh Grizzard. So, and then that kind of brings us to what we're going to talk about today. Do we get Josh Grizzard any new weapons
right?
Via the draft? Because we are headed or we're barreling towards the off season and really roster management, and how do the Bucs get better from a personnel standpoint? We've talked a little bit about coaching changes, but let's talk about the pieces that they can use to go further than the wild card round in the playoffs. So Adam, you want to kind of set the viewers up on what we'll be doing here today?
Yeah, so you know, over the next few months, there's going to be plenty of mock drafts. And after being in Alabama and seeing all the Senior Bowl players, seeing the prospects, we thought it'd be a fun exercise, Josh and I, to do a Senior Bowl mock draft where we go on Pro Football Focus, look at its mock draft simulator in all its glory, and go through some picks of different players that played at the Senior Bowl, trying to familiarize the Pewter people with guys that the Bucs, they might have them on their radars. I know Scott Reynolds, he did a story yesterday going over 12 Bucs draft targets from the Senior Bowl. So there's plenty of exciting players. It's a well that Jason Light over the years, he's found plenty of talent there. And the Bucs, they definitely need talent when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And that's something, whether it's cornerback, safety, inside linebacker, getting an edge rusher, really any position there, they could use an influx of young talent. So you'll probably see plenty of players at those positions in our mock draft, but be sure to leave your suggestions as we go through each pick in the comments section. But before we do that, Josh, I kind of want to talk about some of those defensive needs with you, because it's presumed that the Bucs should fill one of those holes in free agency, right?
Yeah, I think there are, just in general, going through free agency, and I've put together. I've been looking at free agency quite a bit over the last month or so. I think I put together a little over 400 evaluations or projections for contracts. And I would say in general, defense has a little bit more depth to it in the free agency market. And I think we both believe that that's the case with the draft as well. So I think the offseason in terms of available pieces lines up a little bit better for the Bucs than it may for some other teams that are looking to add offensive talent. I think the one position that everybody, maybe outside of the Advent Health Training Center, agrees would really put this defense in another level is kind of a premier edge rusher. That guy who can just help them win with 4, because the Bucs have a solid base level of talent in terms of their pass rush. Vita Vea is coming off one of his best seasons of his career, if not his best. Kalijah Cansey took another step forward. For him to be leading or towards the top of some of the pass rush metrics for interior defensive linemen, such as sacks and pressures, despite missing the first, 4 or 5 weeks of the season, speaks to his continued ascension as a pass rusher. Yaya Diaby took a huge step. The sack numbers weren't there like the year before, but he was absolutely a much more consistent pass rusher than he was his rookie year, when he ran into some sacks just by virtue of being a guy who doesn't quit on a play, but didn't necessarily win as a pass rusher very often. In year 2, he was one of the leading pressure guys in the NFL. I know Brandon Thorne had him towards the top of his true pressure rate metrics, where they look at high quality wins versus, kind of schemed up things. So you have all of that, but none of those guys is like a true alpha, can win, on such a consistent basis and so quickly that you feel good about a 4-man rush. So I think most of us agree that that's really something that can take the Bucs to the next level, because if they get that, then all of a sudden the back end isn't as difficult for corners, for safeties, because the quarterback has to get the ball out before receivers are ready to win and things like that. So I think that would be the number one. There are a couple guys at the top of the free agent edge board, if you will. Josh Sweat from the Eagles, he's still playing. He's about ready to go for the Super Bowl next week. And then Khalil Mack, even at 34 years old, he was still very efficient, a very productive pass rusher for the Chargers. And I believe it came out in the last week that he does want to play yet another season. So they kind of lead that list. I think before we get into the draft, it's probably a good idea for us to set up, say, a mock free agency. Now, we're not going to get into depth, but we should note what are some of the internal moves we expect the Bucs to make in terms of players that are set to be free agents, and kind of knock that out of the way and say, okay, they've addressed these things. And then why don't we give the Bucs one big move in free agency, not trade. We're going to keep all the draft picks they've got right now, but one, we're going to fill one starting need via free agency in this mock before we actually get into the draft. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So 2 internal one's a free agent. One of them, his future is kind of in the air. I think we have to address those first.
Sure.
So Levante David just turned 35 years old, still showed that he could be a starting caliber linebacker, maybe not the elite one that he was a few years ago, but enough to maybe be a stopgap for another year. Because if he retires, then the Bucs need 2 inside linebackers, with Savassi Dennis really being injury prone to begin his career. And then also Jamel Dean. You talk about injury prone. He hasn't played a full season yet in his career. He was hampered by injuries last year, but when he's on the field, he can be a solid coverage corner, but he's not the kind of guy that can really be a playmaker, get interceptions, and really transform a defense. So you have those 2 guys. Where do you see them in the picture of 2025?
Yeah, one of the great things about Senior Bowl week, besides getting to see all of this young, draftable talent and how they might be able to help a Bucs team, is you get to talk to people inside and outside the football industry, or I should say inside the football industry, whether that be team personnel. You get to talk to other people around the NFL in terms of journalists and analysts, and you kind of start to get a feel for how players and teams might operate just from the rumor mill. And I think when it comes to Levante, we at Pewter Report feel comfortable saying we think he's going to be back for another year. We know that the Bucs absolutely, if he decides to play, it's going to be in Tampa Bay.
Right.
It really comes down to whether Levante wants to play, and the feeling that we get, the consensus is Levante's got one more in him. And so I think for the purposes of this mock draft, we should say Levante David is back with the Bucs for, and I'm going to get murdered if I get the year wrong, for his 14th season.
Yeah, I think 14. Yep.
14th season. So we're going to say Levante's back. With Jamel Dean, I think we have a blueprint for how the Bucs feel about injury-prone cornerbacks. It really happened last year with Carlton Davis. The Bucs were able to get a third-round pick for Davis. Jamel Dean, it's hard to say whether there's some trade value there. I think there might be, but I'm still trying to get a read on what that might be. But I think it's safe to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sly, if you think that he's back, by all means, push back on this. But I think he's gone. And for the purposes of today's mock draft, why don't we say he's just cut? And the Bucs decide to save about $8 million in salary cap.
Yeah, I think that would be the direction if I was Jason Light that I would probably lean towards. You get younger at the position, hopefully more durable, right? Like a guy like Zion McCollum, who was drafted in 2022, he's been the definition of durable, and he's a real toolsy corner. So you at least have one part of the puzzle solved with him. But it's tricky though with Jamel Dean though, because if they cut him, you saw how much the team needed cornerback depth last season when they had guys like Funderburg, Hayes. Really just anyone off the street was trying to fill in when Dean went down, but you don't have a third corner really, and then you don't have a second corner. Then it becomes an issue where the Bucs, they've done it in the past. They've drafted two cornerbacks in the same draft. They had MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis in one draft. That could be a direction that they maybe go this time around should Dean be cut, but I think it's the right move. I think it's a way that they can save money, maybe for one of these outside free agents where they shore up another area, maybe of the defense, but also you get younger and then really you just add more upside, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way that they go. But you pointed out some very important potential downsides to a move like that. And I think you said it really well earlier. When Jamel Dean's on the field, he is one of the 32 best cornerbacks in the NFL. I know many Bucs fans may take issue with that because they're just done with him, but it is the truth. It just is the truth. Is he inconsistent? By all means, he is. But when you take the aggregate of his play, and cornerback is an extremely volatile position in general. If you go outside of Tampa Bay, you're going to see lots of corners where great game, bad game, great season, bad season. It is a volatile position, which has kept the prices on cornerbacks up until this past season fairly stagnant versus many of the other positions in the NFL. And you're just starting to see that cornerback market boom, which is what may give Jamel Dean some trade value, is because he is very affordable at only $13 million in cash for next year. And another team may want to take that risk on Dean just simply because you're about to see cornerback prices skyrocket, especially with some upcoming extensions, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, Trent McDuffie. A lot of those guys are going to really push that market high. So then, Adam, would it be safe to say if we've got the Bucs letting go of Jamel Dean, if we've got one external move that we're going to acknowledge before we get into this draft, as much as we talked about edge earlier, should it be the Bucs have Chris Braswell? He flashed towards the end of the season. You wrote about it a little bit.
Yeah,
there were some positive signs towards the end of the season, despite a lack of playing time. We know they have Yaya Diaby. Do we go for an edge in free agency? Or do we look at a corner? And if you want, I can give you some options in both, just because I've done extensive research here in who would be available at both positions.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. When you look at the edge position in particular, so we mentioned the corner and the lack of depth there. So the Bucs next season, they have Yaya and they have Chris Braswell. But Anthony Nelson, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Shaq Barrett, three guys that were crucial down towards the end end of the season, they're all free agents too. So really both rooms kind of need an influx of talent. So why don't you break down some of the free agents that could be possibilities?
Yeah, so the top of the market for cornerback, the way I've kind of got it planned out in terms of my projections, you've got Byron Murphy from Minnesota. He's very interesting because lots of ball production, and he can play inside and outside. So he can be an outside corner. He can move into the slot. I think the Bucs feel pretty good about their slot options right now, but he has that versatility. So if Todd Bowles ever wanted to say, let's play some, just man on man, right? Let's just have a corner follow a guy wherever he goes. Byron Murphy has that versatility. Now, his price tag, I've got him at $18 million a year. Okay. Over probably like a 3-year deal. Towards the top of the corner market, you also have DJ Reed from the New York Jets. He should be seeing probably about $15 million a year. I don't know if he would be a Bucs target just because he is, in terms of stature, not that big, right? So he's a 5'9". That's not typically somebody that the Bucs have coveted before. You have Charvarius Ward from the 49ers. I've got him projected for about $14.5 million per year. And he checks a lot of the boxes that the Bucs would like. He's got the size, he's got the length, he can play zone or man. Then one that I think it's pretty safe to say they're not going to go after is Carlton Davis, but he is a pending free agent, $14.5 million per year. Played very well for the Lions this year, but what happened towards the end of the year with Carlton Davis?
He got injured.
And we just talked about how the Bucs are not exactly wanting to sign up for yet more injuries in the secondary. Asante Samuel Jr. With the Chargers. He is coming off of an injured season where I think he only played 2 or 3 games. I've got his projection at about $13.33 million per year. Paulson Adebo for the Saints. He had a really good 2023, not so great 2024. I think there was an injury involved there. He only played about 37% of the team's snaps. $11.25 million is my projection for him. Rasul Douglas. There's a vet. He's over 30. He's actually 31 years old this year. But he did play 75% of the Bills' snaps. I've got him at $11 million. And those are that's the top of the market when we talk about cornerback. If we move over to edge, we already talked about the 2 at the top. Khalil Mack, I actually think Khalil Mack will be the only edge rusher in pure free agency to get over $20 million a year. And I've got him at 22.5. I think Pro Football Focus has him at the same projection. Then you've kind of got this second tier, which is Josh Sweat, who we talked about a little bit before. You're looking at probably about $17 million a year for him. Hassan Reddick, who still got it, but you never know where the thought process is with Reddick. I think he's burned some bridges in how he handled his contract dispute with the Jets last year. I've got him at $15 million, along with Chase Young, who had a pretty solid season with the Saints. And then Dio Odeyingbo, I can never get his name right. I've got him at about $12.3 million. So you can see the depth falls off much quicker at edge in free agency than it does at cornerback. So which position do you want to go with? Do we want to leave it up to the fans? Who do they want to bring on?
I definitely want to hear the fans' feedback on that one. If it was me personally, I think there was one comment here earlier by Steven. You want a cornerback with experience, and I think you can see more pass rushers in the league come in right away and have success. It's hard for cornerbacks, on the other hand, to really do the same because they have to learn the defense, especially one like Todd Bowles, where he asks so much of young corners. I mean, one argument, Zion McCollum, it took him a year to really develop behind the scenes. Then he spent the second year kind of easing his way into the starting role, and then by the third season, he took it. It's harder for a corner than an edge rusher, in my opinion. So somebody like Byron Murphy is really appealing. You want that size, you want that ball production, and then maybe you get somebody in the draft.
Okay. All right. So we want to say the Bucs take Byron Murphy?
Let's see. Malcolm Harvey says Byron Murphy. JB Easy says Javarius Ward. Tall Florida guy says Javarius Ward.
So I think that there's a very interesting dynamic here, and I'll just point it out. The likelihood of Ward versus Murphy actually reaching free agency. I personally think Minnesota is going to bring back Byron Murphy. I don't know if he ever actually gets to free agency, whereas I think the 49ers have already kind of made their investment in cornerback long term. They signed Diamador Lenore to a long-term extension in the middle of the season. That unfortunately Charvarius Ward suffered tragedy that the Bucs fans can relate to with Shaq Barrett, but he did. Unfortunately, he suffered the passing of a child this past season, which caused him to miss some time, very understandably so. But it seems like because of that, because of the pain associated with the San Francisco area due to the loss of his child, he may be looking for a change of scenery. Plus, the 49ers have other players that they're going to have to reinvest in. George Kittle's probably looking for a contract extension. Brock Purdy probably has a contract extension coming up. They just invested in Brandon Ayuk. So I think there's a higher likelihood that Charvarius Ward actually makes it to free agency. And heck, you cannot get much further away from San Francisco than Tampa Bay.
So geographically, yeah.
So I think that could play into our thinking here. Do we see any push for that top end edge, or do we want to say maybe Charvarius Ward is the move?
So there was one comment here. We'll also get to Trey Hendrickson a little bit later. Sante Samuel, EN said Mack or Sweat would be nice. Would love to see a deep rotation at outside linebacker. Ward, DB, and Young DE.
Okay.
Ward is a better fit. Yeah, I think let's go Charvarius Ward in free agency, maybe on like a 3-year deal. Yep. And then we'll get to the mock draft here in just a moment. We do have 2 super chats I want to get to.
All right, let's do it.
First one here by Bucs Baseman, $1.99. Thank you. Veteran edge, Hendrickson, tired of the draft. So one of Jason Light's weaknesses has been finding that edge rusher in recent seasons through the draft. So he relied on Jason Pierre-Paul, on Shaq Barrett, were outside additions, not drafted. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka hasn't really worked out in Tampa Bay. The only one that really has in recent years is Yaya Diaby. Drafting him in the 3rd round, he looks like a hit, definitely. Would the move maybe be getting somebody like Trey Hendrickson?
Well, I think Scott Reynolds of Pewter Report definitely kind of covered this on a recent Pewter Pulse that he did, where he suggested that the Bucs should trade for Trey Hendrickson. And I guess I'll just leak a little bit of planned content that we're doing at Pewter Report. One here in the near term, I will be filming later today. It'll probably be out tomorrow. The latest in my Bucs offseason roster building series. We've done 2 videos. I think they've done pretty well. One where we covered where the Bucs stand just at the end of the 2024 season, who's under contract, who's a lock to be on next year's team, who's maybe more of a bubble player, who do we think doesn't return, where their cap situation stood. And then in the second video went over what are some of the likely moves, how can the Bucs create more cap room. So the next video, we will go into depth on potential external moves in free agency as well as the trade market. And I'll be exploring what does a trade for Hendrickson look like? What does a trade for Myles Garrett look like? What does a trade for, say, Max Crosby, who has a new general manager with ties to Tampa Bay? What do those look like in terms of the draft capital the Bucs would have to give up, as well as the new contracts for those players? So that's upcoming. And then this particular podcast that we're doing on Sunday mornings, we're not going to do just one, right, Adam?
Yeah, we're going to keep going. We're going to have them, I think, every other Sunday going forward.
Every other Sunday going forward. So we will not be with you on Super Bowl Sunday, but we will be the Sunday thereafter, and then every other Sunday until we get to the draft. And we're going to explore different types of drafts that the Bucs may have. So one of those, I promise, we're going to do one where we trade for Trey Hendrickson. And how does that change what the mock draft and what the Bucs potential draft could look like? We're not going to do it today. Today, we've got a special slant on our draft, and it's going to be specifically, we're doing a Senior Bowl only draft. So we're only going to look at guys who were available or who practiced during the Senior Bowl week. Maybe we open up to guys who should have been at the Senior Bowl and allow Carson Schwarzenegger to be an opportunity for us to draft. And then guys who played in the Senior Bowl just yesterday. So that Hendrickson one, just stay tuned. We'll have it in a future one. We're also going to try and get some draft experts from around the league in to help us with some of these drafts. So I like the idea of the Hendrickson one. I've been talking about it for a few months. Scott did a Pewter Pulse. We're right there with you. That was Bucs Basement, right? Who
Yep, Bucks
posted that?
basement.
So we'll get to it. So, and you said there was another super chat.
There's one more, and then promise we'll get to some draft in here. So LDBC's most wanted. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Do you think Luke Gedeke and K. Dotton get extensions? And where do you guys rank the 2022 draft class? There's sneak value up and down. Hashtag build light statue.
So what I would say to that LDBC is I expect both of those players to get extensions this offseason. And I think that the Bucs 2022 draft class in general was a really awesome one. Now, not up at the top, right? That was the Logan Hall draft. And while he had a better 2024, he's still considered a rotational guy who you can get some quality snaps out of, but not somebody who's looking like he's probably going to live up to his 33rd overall pick stature. But when you look at Gedeke, you look at Otten, Zion McCollum was in that draft as well. So the Bucs got a lot of value. They got it at some quality positions, especially Gedeke and McCollum. Both of those, tackle and cornerback, are considered some of the premier positions in the NFL these days. And then Otten definitely held the Bucs offense together for about a month while Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were available. And that, just speaking of Godwin, I think that's the other internal moves that we should really quickly address before we get into the draft. We're expecting Godwin to be back with the Bucs. We're expecting Ben Bredeson to be back with the Bucs. So we're going to operate with those moves in mind, as well as the ones we talked about on defense, with Jamel Dean being gone and Levante David being back. So
Yeah, Baker said it best yesterday. He'd love CG back in Tampa Bay. CG loves Tampa Bay to that point, and I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think any other situation around the NFL is really as appealing as coming back, being right with Mike Evans. He's going to be healthy again. Hopefully he has another big season. So Baker Mayfield can really improve on his. But the comment there from LDBC talked about sneaky value, and I think there's no better way to get sneaky value than with Celsius and all the different flavors. So Celsius is the official energy drink of Pewter Report. It fueled us throughout last week, and it will continue to throughout the offseason and draft season. There's many fantastic flavors. You got the Arctic Vibe, Raspberry Peach, Strawberry Lemonade, Watermelon Lemonade. You can build a draft class with different Celsius flavors. And I don't know about you, Josh. Do you have any favorite flavors?
That Watermelon Lemonade up on the screen is calling my name as we speak.
Yeah, that's a great one. And if you want to find different Celsius flavors, you can go on the Celsius store locator, or you can find them at your nearest Target, Publix, Winn-Dixie. Shout out Piggly Wiggly and Quick Trip up north. You can even find them at Lowe's or your bodega.
Bodega.
That was good. And if you like Celsius, you go to these places and you're like, I want more Celsius. You can never have enough. You can get it in bulk on Amazon with the subscribe and save feature. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report. All right, Josh, I think it's time we fire up this bad boy.
We went half an hour and haven't even gotten into it.
We went half an hour. So let's get into it. All right.
So we are using the Pro Football Focus draft simulator. Shout out to former Pewter reporter and friend of the program, Trevor Sikkema, their lead draft analyst.
Yeah, so we're here. We have it all set and ready to go. Before we hit the start button, do we want to trade up at all? Do we wait a few picks?
We're going to do trade up scenario. We're going to do trade down scenario on future episodes. So we're just going to go with straight. The Bucs have 6 picks as it stands right now for the 2025 NFL draft, picking at 19, 51, 83, 119, 156, and 237. That is a pick in every round except the 6th. So we're just going to go straight with those and see how does the draft board fall. And we are going to keep this exclusively to Senior Bowl accepted invitees or participants.
All right, here we go. So we're at number 19 here. The Bucs are on the clock. And here are the top players available. So you have Benjamin Morrison, Mikael Williams, but sticking with Senior Bowl only players, Shamar Stewart.
Shamar Stewart, yep.
Gray Zabel, who had a great week, North Dakota State. teammate of Cody Mauch. Jason Light likes the offensive lineman.
Yep. So Zabel was voted, I think, the top offensive lineman by his defense on the, if I remember correctly, Zabel was on the national team, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So the national linebackers, edge players, and interior defensive linemen voted him the number one, the best offensive lineman that they had to face all week long in practices. So Zabel, he was one of the highest draft stock risers, I think, out of any player from the Senior Bowl, and he pushed himself up to potentially a top, a first round pick. If we go up just a little bit, I think we should give a little bit of just a scouting report, if you will, on Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. He was another guy who showed up really well. He was winning a lot of his one-on-ones. He's got power. He's definitely got length. I want to say he's over 260, 270 pounds. So a little bit of a tweener between an edge and an interior guy, but that does give him versatility that he can move inside and outside. Showed some really advanced pass rush moves while he was down there. Definitely played off of his power. I think the biggest issue with his game, when you look at his tape at Texas A&M, lack of finish. Lots of wins, lots of pressures, but I was actually just looking at him this morning. For his career at Texas A&M, his missed tackle rate, Sly, you want to take a guess at what that number is?
Say like 18%.
Yeah, well, go up 50% over that. It was 27%.
Wow.
Career missed tackle rate at Texas A&M. He had 18 missed tackles and a total of 48 combined tackles over 3 seasons. So for those who are very frustrated with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's career and all of those sacks he almost had but couldn't finish, for those who are frustrated with Yaya Diaby with all of his pressures but no sacks this year, well, not no sacks, but a reduction in sack production, I don't think Shamar Stewart is the guy that they will want, but there are a lot of tools there. He can set the edge. He's very physical. He plays through the whistle. So just a little bit on Shamar Stewart there. Who else we got?
So one more thing on Stewart is that where he does excel is the pressure department. You mentioned that he had 42 pressures last year for Texas A&M. He had an 88.1 run defense grade, but he's listed here as an edge. And at 6'6", I think he came in at like 285. He doesn't really fit the profile of somebody in like a 3-4 defense. He's built more like Logan Hall, so expecting him to maybe be the answer there opposite Yaya Diaby, to me, it doesn't make much sense schematically.
I think you brought up a really good point there in that what is he at the next level? I don't think that he is an interior guy. I don't think he's got the mass for that. I don't think he can put on the weight. I think for him, and he did come in at 281 at Senior Bowl. It'll be interesting to see what his weight is when he comes in at the combine. But I think if he can drop to like 267, 271, somewhere in that range, and just be a heavy edge, I think that's where he's at his best at the NFL level. So you want to just kind of adjust it to where we just look at corners and edges?
Yeah, let's do that. Those are probably the biggest needs.
Maybe linebacker. I know a lot of people are very excited about the Bucs getting more athletic at linebacker, and we'll see who's kind of left over there and who were Senior Bowl participants. So
Demetrius Knight, Trey Amos, Devin Ezraku, who had a really good week alongside Mike Green, Princely Montemalian, Darian Porter.
Yeah, I think when you get into Darian Porter, you're probably losing value at 19. But let's go over a few of those other guys. So Demetrius Knight had a rough day one. Absolutely rough day one at the Senior Bowl.
He looked like KJ Britt out there.
He looked absolutely like KJ Britt out there. But he came back on day 2, came back on day 3. And overall, I think he had a pretty decent week. I don't know if he probably rose his draft stock overall. I think Trevor Sikkema and I talked a little bit about Demetrius after day 1. I think Trevor's higher than most of the draft community on him. I don't think many people would put him in the top 32. And I think at 19, it's just not good value from a positional standpoint. And I don't know if Knight provides the upside at that position for him to be the pick there. Trey Amos, the cornerback out of Ole Miss, I think did very well for himself this week. And he very much fits the Bucs mold at cornerback. He's over 6 feet. He's 197 pounds, if I remember correctly, on his way in. Long, rangy corner, understands how to use the sideline to his advantage. He's going to work well in man. He's got some closing speed. He's going to work really well in a cover 3 heavy system where he can just get into those deep drops, keep his eyes on the quarterback, and play the ball. So that's a really interesting one from my perspective. And then one that I fell in love with at the Senior Bowl was Donovan Ezeraku. Definitely showed more power than his tape at Boston College would have you think. And I was really impressed with some of the things that I got to speak with him about during interviews. He set a better edge in the run defense than I expected. And he's got a deep bag of tricks. Just about any way that you would think that an edge rusher can win from a pass rush arsenal, he's got it. He's got the bend. He can win on the high side. Doesn't have the best get off, if we're being completely honest, but he's got a spin move. He's got a rip. He's got a chop. He's got a club. He can use all of it. And he's got production at Boston College as well. So he's one that I'd be really interested in. Landon Jackson had some really good reps, although he's another one of those kind of tweener guys. He's probably playing a little bit bigger than he should. And I think at Arkansas, they didn't use him as a true edge. Often had him at 4-eye or lined up heads up on the tackle. And was there anybody else in this range, or do we want to kind of keep it to these 4?
I would say Donovan Ezeraku, Trey Amos, Shamar Stewart. Yeah, maybe you can toss in Princely Emanimalian just to fill the edge rusher need over inside linebacker maybe in round 1, but definitely would take Ezeraku or Stewart probably over Emanimalian at this spot. Looking at some fan feedback, we have Michael Pless says Amos or Ezeraku makes sense. Would like Kenneth Grant as well. Steven, Amos, JT Olson. Yes, Ezeraku. Tall Florida guy says Amos should be the pick. So I think it's really down to those two, Josh. I think Amos and Ezeraku in round 1.
All right, so we'll put it this way. We'll let the chat decide one of 2 ways. If we get a super chat in the next, let's put a 30-second timer on it, that first super chat with the name of the pick, they'll get it. Otherwise, if there's no super chat, we'll just do a vote and we'll see who's showing up more in the chat. So I don't know if 30 seconds is too long on podcast time, but we're going to try it. So,
I did like Trey Amos. So you spoke about him a little bit. The Ole Miss corner, they had a really stacked defense. But what I like about him is that 6 foot tall, just under 200 pounds. He really fits what Todd Bowles wants in a cornerback. He's smooth, but he's also physical. He can make plays on the ball. He's not afraid to be a fit in a zone defense. And at this point, I do think that he would be probably an upgrade over Jamel Dean when you look at maybe a season or 2 down the line. I think that he offers a lot. But Malcolm Harvey says, Ezeraku.
Let's go, Malcolm. I love it.
Thank you for the super chat. And edge rusher is a big need. So Donovan Ezeraku, he graded out really well this past season, had the sack production. I think he checks a lot of boxes, Josh.
Yeah, and he gives the Bucs an edge rusher that they really haven't had. Braswell wins with power. He wants to go through. He wants to play half man. So does Yaya Diaby. They win with power and they want to go through a tackle. Ezeraku wins on the high side. And I think one thing we didn't really acknowledge when we were talking about this pick, when it comes to at least Trey Amos, we had the Bucs signing Charvarius Ward. So they had their top 2 corners set. I don't know how much value you get when Zion McCollum's still a young guy. The Bucs probably want to give him an extension, maybe not this offseason, maybe next year. And then you're signing Charvarius Ward. Now you're taking your first round pick and not giving them a really a solid path to starting in the next couple of years. With Ezeraku, that's not the case. With Ezeraku, you've got somebody who you can say, yep, we've got a spot. You can beat out Chris Braswell for that top spot. And then again, I love the way that Ezeraku works with Yaya Diaby in terms of he can win the high side, force quarterbacks to want to move up into the pocket. And if they're moving up in the pocket, they're going to meet 3 guys that they don't want to meet. And that's Vea, that's Cansey, and that's Yaya. So I really like that pick, not just from a talent standpoint, but I love it from how it works with the rest of the defense as is. So now here we go. Second round, pick 51. Why don't you read off some of the Senior Bowl guys that PFF has in this area.
Yeah, Iowa State wide receiver Jaden Higgins, if you
He had
want
a
to go
great week.
that route. Yeah, he did have a great week. Jared Ivey, who we saw, didn't do too much, but another edge rusher there. Darius Alexander had a really good week from Toledo. I liked him.
He had a fantastic week. Absolutely.
You have to go
So
down a little bit. You have Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, Jeffrey Bassa, who we both liked. We had a chance to talk to. Very smart, intelligent player. And at 225 pounds, he would fit more of the Levante David linebacker, just being more in coverage. But he also showed he can tackle and hang and hold his own. So those are
yeah,
probably the players here.
another guy who won an award from his teammates. Bassa was
Yeah,
voted the top linebacker by the running backs and tight ends on the national team. Again, and I hope people aren't holding me to getting these teams right, national versus American, but I think I've been right so far. And I think this is really a good spot for us to take a look at what are the rest of the Bucs needs. And why don't we pull up those positions and see, well, if we take the linebacker here, what does that mean for corner? What does that mean for safety? What does that mean for, maybe wide receiver or guard? Do we see, because Bassa, you could maybe skip on him here. The Bucs pick again at 83. He's 79 on PFF's board. He might be there. There's a chance that he's not. And then you're pushing your linebacker pick out to, at that point, the fourth round. So if we look at just those positions where there may still be some need, what does it look like around pick 83 in terms of who we could take? So
yeah.
around 83, you've got Bassa or Azare Thomas. So that makes me think going with corner or linebacker here might be okay because you could get one of the other two. Who
That's
else
really
was?
it.
Yeah, Jack Kaiser.
Yep.
He had a good week, although he's 25 and 227 pounds. Those are a couple of red flags. Billy Bowman had a real up and down week of practice at safety.
He had production with the Sooners in 2023. He had 6 interceptions, 3 of which were pick sixes, but his missed tackle rate was 23.1
Yeah, I
in
think
2024.
most of Baker Mayfield's fans would want that to be a pick we take today too,
Yeah.
for no particular reason.
So I think right now in round 2, just to get value out of the pick, Jaden Higgins, I mean, he's sitting there and he would be a replacement when you think a couple years down the line, maybe for Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Otherwise, you're maybe looking at Jeffrey Bassa here, and then round 3, get Azariah Thomas.
Yep. So we'll do the same thing. So we've got a few names on the board there. We'll give it 30 seconds. A super chat wins the first super chat, I should say, gets to make the pick. Otherwise, we'll let everybody else put the name they want in the chat. And all right, we already have the super chat.
Yeah.
I would think that Bassa would climb post Senior Bowl, so 79 may not be an accurate grade.
Thank you, Richie P.
Yep, we really appreciate that, Richie P. It's interesting because again, I think Trevor is a bit higher on Bassa than most. I don't know that he gets. I think he's going to be a fringe second, third rounder. So I think at 51, it's possible, or I definitely think he'd be available at 51. I still think that there's a chance that he might come in around 83, 79 to 83, because most of the draft community is down on this linebacker class. Although I think some of them did a little bit for themselves, Bassa included here at the Senior Bowl. So Richie P, I'm going to give you the opportunity if you reply real quick in the chat that yes, you want Bassa to be the pick
Richie,
here at 51.
he did comment a couple minutes before that I would go wide receiver. And there's a
receiver.
lot of people in the chat here that are fans of Jaden Higgins.
Okay. All right. Jaden Higgins. We'll do that as the pick between Richie P's overall super chat and then post super chat comment. And then the rest of the chat going for Higgins. Let's go ahead. Can you pull up Higgins's profile for everybody? The height, weight, just some of his production value.
Yeah. So Jaden Higgins, they have him listed at 6'4", 215. He actually came in at 6'2". In 2024, he had a 90.3 PFF grade on 13 games. He did well. He had 87 receptions for 1,185 yards and 9 touchdowns. So you combine the production that he had through the air, he knows how to find the end zone, and he also lined up in the slot. He can line up out wide. So kind of like the Jalen McMillan route last year, you're getting a versatile, do-it-all kind of receiver in Higgins.
Yep. And then just kind of going back to the Pro Bowl games yesterday, Mike Evans gave a little bit of news in terms of his future. Do you want to tell the fans about that?
Yeah, so a reporter asked him about the 2028 flag football games in the Olympics, and he said he'd probably not like be there, and just kind of alluding to like his retirement. So you kind of wonder how many more years that he has.
Yep. So if 2027 is his last season, that still means that a Higgins pick would be able to slot in on his final year of his rookie deal as that heir apparent to Mike Evans. All right, so here we go. We're now at 83. Did we lose Bossa? Bossa off the board?
went one pick before,
One pick before.
And then Azariah Thomas, he won a couple picks before. So that's
sad
probably
face
worst
for both.
case.
Yeah. So who do we have now? Somebody who had a really good Senior Bowl was Harold Fannin Jr.
Yeah, the tight end. He had a good week from Bowling Green. Really dynamic weapon. I mean, the production. He might not have played the best competition, but the production jumps off the screen.
How mad would fans be if we ended up with our first mock draft, 2 of the first 3 picks end up being offensive weapons? Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So just to refresh people here, we have Donovan Ezeraku round 1, Jaden Higgins round 2. I mean, Deion Walker from Kentucky.
Yeah, he had some
Jalen Milroe, the quarterback.
No, thank you. No, thank you. And I'm absolutely vetoing RJ Harvey. You will not get me to take a UCF guy. It's not happening.
David Walker from Central Arkansas. He's a little bit smaller at about 6 feet, but he had production there.
Yeah.
He was very, very good in terms of pass rush win rate, the run stop rate. I mean, he was a stud, but
yeah. Can you pull up linebackers? Because we haven't taken one yet.
We have not.
Let's pull up linebackers and corners and interior defensive linemen. Let's just see what that looks like. All right. So,
Kaiser.
Yeah, Jack Kaiser.
Peebles had a dominant week, and he can do the worm too.
He did. He had a really good week. He's on the smaller size for an interior defensive lineman, but as we know with Kalijah Cansey, that won't stop the Bucs if they think that there's some juice there. So let's pull him up. So he officially weighed in at the Senior Bowl. Let me pull him real quick. At 6 foot and 3/8 and 289 pounds. So about the same height as Kalijah Cansey, a little bit more mass to him. But that could be your guy who's that rotational 3 technique when Kalijah Cansey needs a breather. I kind of like that Peebles pick there.
He is ranked 136, so maybe you think at 119.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great value at 83, but we're also limiting our board to just Senior Bowl guys. So
what about just being a menace and getting Deion Walker?
Yeah, Walker's interesting. I don't think he stood out a ton, but he does give that size. So, and Vita Vea is probably closer to leaving this team than Kalijah Cansey is. Let's see, what did he officially weigh in at?
6'7", 340.
Yeah, that's a big dude. That's a very big
boy.
Yeah, you worry a little bit about the pad level at 6'7". So a couple of, I think, interior guys. There were some linebackers I was hoping to talk about. I'm not sure if they're off the board yet, but a couple of the Auburn guys popped, especially for just the energy that they brought to the defense. And they? Oh, no, never mind. I know the pick.
Quincy Riley?
Is. That's the pick. He's not going to be at 151. He's going to be a top 100 pick. Quincy Riley. There's your developmental guy behind Zion McCollum and Charvarius Ward. Yes, he's listed at 6 foot, 195 here on PFF, but he actually measured in at 5'10", 192, which the weight is great. The height would be a little bit of a difference for the Bucs, but Riley, ball production for days. He had 8 interceptions over his 3 seasons at Louisville. He had 27 passes defensed, led the ACC with 13 passes defensed in 2024. He was on guys' hip pockets all week long. I am going to create a campaign for the chat to vote for Quincy Riley. Forget the rest of them. This is the dude right here.
All right. So getting to some fan feedback here, we have Donald says Walker is a steal in the 3rd round. Buccaneer Bryce asked, "Is Darius Alexander from Toledo here?" He went a little bit earlier.
Yeah, he did
especially
go.
after the week he had.
He had a really good week. That's a Buccaneer Bryce. That's a really great name to bring up. I'm hearing a lot of Walker.
Yep. Michael
Riley.
Quincy Riley or Peebles.
Yep, Michael Pless knows what's up. There's a real ball knower. He's a tape watcher.
Yeah. All right. We do have a couple super chats to get to. So Richie P, thank you for the $5 super chat. As crazy as this may sound, Sean McVay said the best player on day 1 was Azariah Thomas. Funny thing is, I heard no one else mention him. So Azariah Thomas, I think that he's a great pick in terms of being somebody along the lines of Quincy Riley, developmental corner that could stay behind the scenes. In this case, learning behind McCollum and Ward, but he did go a couple picks before he went at 79, so he's not an option here. But definitely, we'll look into Azariah Thomas more.
Yeah, and Richie, one thing I will say, he did have a great day 1, and I even think day 3 he looked good. There's one thing for me, he's going to have a question mark. Like, I'm not going to have a really great grade on him until after the combine, specifically for one thing that I saw on day 2 that has me a little bit worried. It's a question mark for me, which was he was struggling between 5 and 10 yards to keep up with the receivers that he was matched up with. So for me, I want to see what does his 10-yard split look like when he does the combine to see, does he have that initial burst or is he capable of it? And I just caught him on a bad day. So he's got the long speed, he's got the closing speed, but I'm a little concerned about just that initial 5 to 10 yard split. Can he keep up with some of the burners in the NFL? So there was lots to like with Thomas. On day 3, he was breaking up a bunch of passes. I think he definitely is able to get his head around and make plays on the ball. And that's something that the Bucs have lacked. Zion McCollum's shown some ability there early last season, fell off later. But I think a lot of things Bucs fans maybe don't even realize is Zion McCollum was a top 5 player in passes defense last year in the NFL, or he might have come in at 6th. And there were only like
17 of them.
Yep.
Right.
There were only, I want to say, like, we were talking about it while we were in Mobile, but I can't remember the exact number I gave, but there are only like 9 guys with more interceptions than Zion McCollum had last year, which I think goes back to resetting expectations and recalibrating people's expectations when it comes to interceptions. The simple fact of the matter is most people don't get more than 2 to 3 interceptions a year. That's just the way it is. Now, you hope that you collect a bunch of guys who can get 2 interceptions, and that's how you end up with a defense that has a bunch. But for anybody who's frustrated with the lack of ball production, 2 to 3 is actually pretty solid for any given player. So,
yeah.
All right. So
and we got one more from here. Cody Haynes, thank you for the $1.99. Why not Kobe? Kobe Bryant, not the basketball player, but the cornerback from Kansas. He had 4 interceptions. Again, really good ball production, really good run defense grade. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl, though. So we're limiting our scope a little bit, but he's definitely somebody to watch.
So this is a Senior Bowl only draft. So we might bring up Kobe Bryant in a future mock draft. Stay tuned. Tune in 2 weeks from today. So what is the chat saying? Did we get a super chat for a specific player, or are we just going to take a consensus here?
I think we're going to take a consensus. Buccaneer Bryce, love Quincy.
There's the consensus. Quincy.
I bet he's a 2nd rounder when it's all said and done. JB easy. Riley has the ball. Hawk skills we crave. Yeah.
My propaganda campaign worked.
I think so. So we're going to go Quincy Riley here, Pewter people, here in the 3rd round.
And then we'll get a little bit faster here for these last 3 picks. We're trying to keep this around an hour. We're coming in right around that right now. So, all right, who do we have left? Riley Leonard.
Yep. So we have Riley Leonard, Jalen Knoll, Jackson Dart throwing darts, Jack Kaiser.
I've heard Jackson Dart's going to be a 1st rounder.
Yeah.
From anybody willing to listen to his agent.
Pretty much. It's a lot of agent talk.
Yeah. So Jack Kaiser. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, do like that one. I actually had the chance to talk to Jack Kaiser for a couple minutes, and I was absolutely blown away. Like that man, he's really nice, but he's very smart. He has the football IQ, and I don't know, like just something about the fact that he played 6 years at Notre Dame, has that big game experience. He played, I think, 69 games there. Like he'd be NFL ready in my mind, and he backed it up. He had an amazing Senior Bowl week. He had a
Yeah, he
couple
did.
interceptions. He was holding his own in coverage. So
Like
Kaiser's a dude.
yeah, like Baza, I think he won the best linebacker award for the American team. Um, oh, buddy,
Oladejo.
he won't be there at 119, but I
He
don't
will
care.
not.
All right, so let's
7
talk a little
sacks.
bit about Oluwafemi Oladejo. So this is a Todd Bowles linebacker, edge rusher right here. He played 3.5 seasons at inside linebacker, and then UCLA switched him to edge like 4 games into this past season, and he had some production. Does it have his total pressures on here? What was it? 20, no, 33. So we can just add them up. Sacks, hits, and hurries adds up to pressure. So that's 33, 7 sacks. He has the walk off the bus checkbox marked off. Just really, really built. I think he weighed in at 261, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, listed at 6'3", 250, but I think he was a little bit heavier.
Yeah, 6'2 3/4, 261 pounds at the Senior Bowl weigh-ins. He won with leverage. He won with power. He played half man. He has a long arm. And as raw as he is as an edge rushing prospect, which I'm sure turns Bucs fans off, but we're talking about a 4th or 5th round pick here. He even flashed like a fake spin, then one high side on one-on-ones, can set a heavy edge. And Todd Bowles requires his edge guys to drop into coverage with 3.5 years of inside linebacker experience. He's somebody who's going to be comfortable dropping into coverage. So I like the Oladejo there. I would be fine with Jack Kaiser there. Can we pull just linebackers?
Yeah, let's do that.
Lindenberg had a pretty good week.
He did.
I would say he's more of a traditional Mike linebacker than a Will. So you could actually put him next to Levante.
Yeah, 240. He's a bigger boy.
Yeah, his official weigh in at Senior Bowl was 6'2 1/8, 239 pounds. So he's definitely got the size to play Mike. Yeah, we'll kind of give it to the chat from here.
Yeah, I think it's between Jack Kaiser and Oladejo. And you talk about getting value, maybe in the middle rounds of the NFL draft. You can also get plenty of value by working with Muni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations, we're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
Managing your family's wealth means more to Muni Financial than simply allocating your assets. It means legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts, and insurance services. With 40 years of experience, let Muni Financial help you plan ahead and stay ahead. Call Muni Financial at 800-868-6864. That's 800-868-6864, or visit immunifinancial.com. All right, so we are back here. Let's see what the comments have to say. No to Kaiser due to his age, but that's just me. Go Oladejo. Abraham, Oladejo looked good at the Senior Bowl. I'm liking Oladejo. Michael Pless. Oladejo would be awesome. Upside pick. All right, so I'm thinking, Mr. Josh, we're going Oladejo here. We're getting some edge, outside linebacker depth.
Flood the position. I love it.
Yeah.
And that is a Jason Light signature. When there is an issue at a position group, he will flood the position smartly. So, all
Sorry
right.
to see your boy.
Upton Stout had a phenomenal Senior Bowl week. Phenomenal. But he's listed at safety here for PFF. I think he
He's
was
only
listed
5'9".
as a corner for at the Senior Bowl. I think they actually had him as a corner. Let me double check that. Yeah, they had him listed as a corner. He's probably a slot only guy, but he had a phenomenal week. But you'd be kind of, again, flooding a position where the Bucs are pretty set already with Tyke Smith and then Chris Izzian backing him up. So I'm not sure if that's the way to go. It's good. It's good talent though.
Yeah, only a 7.9 missed tackle rate. I think that stands out, especially from that position. The run defense, really, he looks like a complete package. Played in the slot a little bit, a lot more than he did in 2023. He didn't play a ton at corner, though, so I don't know. He would profile as like a versatile defensive back, and that's something that would appeal to Todd Bowles, too.
Yep.
So, of Senior Bowl guys, we have him, have Lindenberg still, Jonah Monheim. Not a ton of guys left.
Yeah. Trying to think. And, at this point in the draft, you're just trying to find dart throws. I think Upton Stout might actually be the best one.
Yeah.
It would allow the Bucs to get a little bit more versatile with Izzian and maybe even Tyke playing up top and matching with Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah.
Lindenberg's still there.
Options here.
Actually,
Upton Stout
I like Lindenberg here because, again, we haven't found a linebacker to this point, especially not one at Mike to pair with Levante. So Lindenberg, I think he's smart, he's heady, he's physically limited, although I think I saw him on the zebra tracking hitting around 18, 19 miles an hour. So maybe not as physically limited as I thought. 13% missed tackle rate's not terrible. More of a run defender than a coverage guy, but at this point in the draft, you're not going to find like uber elite athlete. I actually like Lindenberg just to start filling out that linebacker room. That's me. We'll leave it to the chat though.
Yeah. So Richie P, he says Lindenberg. Michael Pless says go Lindenberg. JT Olson, the Lindenberg crashed and burned. Go Nick Martin.
That was good. All right. So what are we seeing? Do we have a super chat to take ownership of the pick, or are we just going with a consensus here?
I think we're going to go with the consensus. Oh, here's a comment from realtor David Zussman we could talk about. In my opinion, Jason Light should sign Jamian Sherwood and Jack Gibbons in free agency at middle linebacker. This way, Jalen Walker in the second round is just enough for filling the middle linebacker room, and we can get more depth at safety and cornerback.
Yeah, Jamian Sherwood had a really great kind of breakout season in 2024, and he will probably be one of the top 4 or 5 linebackers signed in terms of APY. I've even gotten some information from people who know these things. He may actually have the second highest APY out of all inside linebackers who signed this offseason, second or third. So I know he's very well thought of across the league, and that would be a fantastic kind of just move him right into that starting lineup next to Levante. So and then Jalen Walker, it's a bit of a dart throw. He's definitely more of a project. What position does he really play? Is it linebacker?
Yeah.
Better suited as an edge? Todd Bowles is the kind of guy who can take those tweeners and kind of get a lot out of them in both areas. So it's a really cool idea, David. I really like it.
Yeah, I do too. Abraham says Lindenberg, we need a linebacker. Steven says Lindenberg. So that outweighs it. We have 5 people saying Lindenberg. That's the direction we're going to go.
So while it's pulling our next pick, why don't you bring up our picks so far?
Yes.
And we'll talk a little bit about our offseason. So we re-signed Chris Godwin, re-signed Ben Bredesen on the offense. We re-signed Levante David at linebacker. We let Jamel Dean go. And so edge, we flooded the position with Donovan Ezeraku and Oluwafemi Oladejo just to make sure that it's difficult for me to say their names.
Definitely.
Jaden Higgins provides a nice pairing with Jalen McMillan for kind of like the B squad to the Mike Evans, Chris Godwin A squad, and presents the future of wide receiver for the Bucs. Quincy Riley to back up Charvarius Ward and Zion McCollum. We signed Ward in the offseason, so now you're 3 deep at corner. And then Cody Lindenberg, a late round guy, probably limited in terms of his ceiling, but you put him with Levante David, and you hopefully get somebody who knows the position well. Maybe the athleticism doesn't show out, but the headiness as a late round dart throw. Lots of late round and even undrafted free agent linebackers have hit better than early round guys. So that is potentially a way that they could go. Now, here we are in the 7th round, final pick. Do we have any Senior Bowl guys left?
So I know Clay Webb from Jacksonville State was there this week. Seth Hennigan, Tyler Shaw, from Louisville. Tommy Hill, cornerback from Nebraska, the Nebraska connection.
Teddy Buchanan was at the East-West Shrine Bowl, not at Senior Bowl. But he's somebody I like late. I am a fan of Teddy Buchanan.
Drew McCoy, I think, was there at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Already got a wide receiver, though.
Shiloh, but he was at the Shrine Bowl.
Yeah.
Maybe if you draft Shiloh, Dion forces a trade to get Shador for nothing.
To Tampa Bay.
Yeah. All right. So if it's me, I do like either the Clay Webb or Tommy Hill. I think those two, again, you could flood cornerback with an extra pick, or you can get somebody to help fill out the offensive line depth.
Yeah. Tommy Hill, he kind of regressed from 2023 when he had 4 interceptions, had a 40.4 passer rating against. He only had 1 interception last year and gave up a passer rating of 119.3 in 7 games. What I like, though, is Clay Webb. Go up here a little bit. So from Jacksonville State, graded out really well in terms of PFF. I did see some things this week where he has played at guard. He has some experience at tackle and center. So with Robert Hainsey, Justin School, and Ben Bredesen, all free agents, the Bucs will need to address offensive line depth at some point. Now, they have one of the best offensive lines in football, but you also need guys behind them. And so I think Clay Webb, as a 7th round pick, he'd be a guy to really address that need. So
you've sold me. I like it. Yeah. What does the chat think?
Let's go here. Tommy Hill, Steven Stansfield said, is the 5'10", 270 guard from UNC still on the board? Lampkin. I think Lampkin was taken.
I'm pretty sure he did. But he impressed a lot of people.
Yeah. The fact you can hold your own against Deion Walker. I know that drill, it's kind of like you want the guys to really stay locked in with each other and not really move the trenches at all. But Lampkin held his own against somebody 70 pounds heavier.
Just to have the confidence to say, I can do this, even if he had lost, just the tenacity. I love that. So I'm a huge fan.
Steven, Clay Webb, small school, big star. Jason Light loves those guys. Cody Malk, Elijah Klein's now. And then he says, I did a mock and I took Webb 7th round. So I think Webb, he addresses a need and he also has a little upside.
Let's do it. We like it.
And so that's our draft. Let's see how PFF grades us. Earned a reward.
Let's go. Oh, they're murdering us. They killed us. We definitely limited our options, though. We did a Senior Bowl one. So the Quincy Riley was probably the best pick. They're giving us an F.
Yeah, I think it's just
Trevor don't know
PFF
ball.
Hasn't updated the board.
Trevor don't know ball. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Trevor don't know ball. So I actually love Trevor. So anyway, so let's kind of talk about it. So what does the Bucs starting roster look like? We'll just kind of burn through it. So basically on offense, it's going to look almost identical to what it did. Actually, it's going to look identical to what it did in 2024. But that wide receiver 4 spot gets upgraded from Sterling Shepard and Rakim Jarrett and Trey Palmer, and now you have a Jaden Higgins, a very big kind of downfield ball winner in a Mike Evans mold. So it allows the Bucs to maybe do a little bit more snap management with Evans and still have that traditional X on the field. Then on defense, what your defensive line, well, we're just going to talk about it in nickel, right? So you've got Yaya Diaby, you've got Vita Vea, you've got Kalijah Kancey, now Donovan Ezeraku, and you added Oluwafemi Oladejo to Chris Braswell as your rotational edge rushers, adding a lot of physicality there. Then at linebacker, you're looking at Levante David. You've got Cody Lindenberg next to him. And I think one of the things that this draft maybe shows us is maybe the Bucs need to be more aggressive in free agency at linebacker, because I don't love Lindenberg as your starting Mike.
Yeah, not at all.
So we definitely didn't address that one quite well enough. And then the secondary would be Charvarius Ward, Zion McCollum, and Tyke Smith as your corners. You've got Quincy Riley, who I think has that inside-outside versatility to pair with Christian Izien. So you've got some versatility with Riley being able to play inside-outside, Izien able to play nickel and safety. And then Jordan Whitehead and Antoine Winfield Jr. up top. That's your defense. So how do you think we did, Sly?
I think we did well. I think when you look at when the board gets updated, Ezeraku's probably a late first rounder who could even go a little bit higher depending on the combine and how he grades. So you have Jaden Higgins. I really like the aspect of him just shoring up that wide receiver room, because you don't want to rely on Ryan Miller and Sterling Shepard when you're mid-season or making a playoff push. I think Higgins really does elevate that room. He's a big target, an end zone guy. So really like that pick. Quincy Riley, I think, adds more depth and playmaking ability to a secondary that surely needs it. And Charvarius Ward, I think he's due for a bounce-back season next year. And pairing him with McCollum, Riley behind them doesn't hurt. Oladejo, really like Oladejo. The fact that he was an inside linebacker and he moved to edge, it speaks to his football intelligence, just holding down the inside linebacker spot, and has a lot of potential, untapped potential that Todd Bowles can really lean into there. Lindenberg, maybe at inside linebacker is like a third or fourth guy. And Clay Webb, I think, really just adds depth in the offensive line room and maybe competes with Elijah Klein at the left guard spot.
Yep. No, I like it. And with Oladejo, it allows Bowles to get really interesting, because you can put him at inside linebacker on some different packages, let him blitz from depth, and there is some similarities to him and JTS. And before I give Bucs fans PTSD, this is a guy we got in the 4th round with JTS talent, not at number 32 overall. I think if you were to take JTS's career and make him a 4th rounder, I think most Bucs fans would be happy, because that's Anthony Nelson.
Yeah. And I think most Bucs fans would be happy. I know Jason Light, Todd Bowles, they could probably use a happy hour after the 2025 NFL draft. And you can as well during the week by stopping at Walk-Ons.
Yeah, so what happened out there tonight?
We struck out at home with leftovers, then we remembered walk-ons.
What effect did the situation have?
Spirit soared. Nick took on a burger. Jen obliterated her ribeye po' boy. And speaking of spirits, Laura even scored a real tasty cocktail. She needed that.
Any lessons learned today?
Yeah. Head straight to walk-ons.
Scratch-made dishes, wall-to-wall TVs, craft beers, and cocktails. Walk-ons for the win.
Today is a great day to head over to Walk-Ons. You got the 2025 Pro Bowl games coming to you live at 3 p.m. from Orlando, Florida. It's your last chance to see Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans for a while on the same field. Alongside Tristan Wirfs and Vita Vea, you have some NBA action later on tonight. Be sure to stop over at Walk-Ons. You can earn, save, and win with the Walk-Ons Rewards app. And you even get free mozzarella logs when you download today. And be sure to try their wings with Southern Bourbon Sauce. It earns you 100 bonus points every time you go there. You earn more points. Just be sure you're heading over to Walk-Ons. They have happy hour Mondays from 3 p.m. to close. And you can check them out at the Wesley Chapel, Midtown Tampa, and Lakeland locations. All right, Josh. So we kind of talked over the draft here and some needs that the Bucs would fill, and as well as free agents different fits, different targets. Do you have any closing thoughts after doing this exercise?
I think if the overall draft is, if Senior Bowl is any indication of the overall draft, I think it matches up well for the Bucs in terms of the defense really outshine the offense through the 3 days of practices that we watched. I think that there's probably more depth at defense than offense overall. And there aren't a lot of blue chippers, I think, in this year's draft. So at 19, I think Jason Light has a few different things that he can do. It's probably he's probably too far back to make a trade up for a true blue chipper. So I don't think a trade up, especially with him only having 6 picks in this draft, is a likely scenario. I do think a trade back is something that Light may look for. You got to find a trade partner with there only being so many true blue chips, and this is not the quarterback draft of last year. It's going to be difficult for him to find a trade partner. So he may be stuck at 19 no matter what, unless he's trading for a veteran like a Trey Hendrickson. So, but I think there's a lot of value to be had on day 2. That second, third round, I think, is where you're going to find a plethora of prospects who can absolutely help the Bucs, specifically on defense. And you'll have a choice between a lot of different players. So I think that that's where you're going to see a lot of the value for this particular draft for Light. And he's proven that he's done well on day 2 of the draft. Second, third round, it's kind of Jason Light's sweet spot. He's done really well there, specifically in some of the areas that they need help in. Defensive back, Antoine Winfield Jr. was a day 2 guy. Jamel Dean was a day 2 guy. Carlton Davis was a day 2 guy. Jordan Whitehead was actually a day 3 guy. So was Zion McCollum. So Yaya Diaby was a day 2 guy. So,
yep.
So I think that that's an area where Light's done really well. So that's where I'm hoping the Bucs find a lot of value and can really help improve this particular roster.
That's really nice insight. And when you kind of go over that, this draft reminds me more of the 2022 draft than the 2024 draft, because it was a draft where the Bucs, they had the 33rd pick, but they found a ton of value in the middle rounds. And I think this draft lines up to be similar to where there isn't a ton of blue chip talent, but you can find those starters. If you're not hitting home runs, just at least hit a lot of singles, be like Ichiro Suzuki, have that good batting average. So I think this draft lines up like that, because you look at last year, Josh, the number 19 pick was Jared Verse. You had 6 quarterbacks go, I think, in the top 10, top 12 area. So you had so many really good signal callers. They've pretty much all hit except JJ McCarthy, you're going to see after injury. But just so much talent. By comparison, this year, there isn't as much. So it'll be up to Jason Light, even without John Spytek, to really find those middle round gems.
Yeah, because I think one Senior Bowl guy we didn't really talk about, but everybody else was, and he was off the board before we got to 19, was Mike Green. And I just don't see Mike Green being there. If he's there at 19, you sprint that pick up.
Yeah, you're running. You're doing a little.
So, but I know this was a lot of fun. I hope the viewers really enjoyed it. So we'll be doing this every other week. So mark your calendars, February 16th. I hope to have you back on. We're going to look to find some external people. We did talk to a few people at Senior Bowl to see if they would want to join us. But this has been a lot of fun, and we hope that the viewers really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. As Josh said, February 16th will be our next live mock draft. But in the meantime, PewterReport.com is going to have all the news, the latest updates on Josh Grizzard becoming the offensive coordinator, some more stories on the Pro Bowl that happened, as well as the Senior Bowl, and just more free agency and draft news. So PewterReport.com. You can also find us on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Pewter Report. And where you're watching this on YouTube at Pewter Report TV, we have plenty of videos. Scott's Pewter Pulses. You can find my top 10 takeaways coming at you tomorrow, and just other videos along the way. So thank you for watching our mock draft episode here. For Josh Queipo, I am Adam Slivon, wishing you a great Sunday, and be sure to tune in on Monday for our next Pewter Report podcast. Out.